we've been lucky enough to make contact with Tess Ingram, who's a UNICEF spokesperson who left Gaza on Monday and is therefore one of the few external humanitarian aid workers to have got into the north of the Strip recently. And Tess is speaking to us from Amman in Jordan. I suppose we begin with the big question, which may not be answerable, Tess, which is how much aid is getting in to Gaza and how much of it is getting to the places where it's most desperately needed?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question at the moment, James, because still nowhere near enough aid is getting into the Gaza Strip. And that's an enormous problem because, as you say, we're on the precipice of a famine. It could happen at any moment. So if you look at the numbers of the trucks coming in March, we averaged about 150 trucks a day. In the first 2 weeks of April, that's gone up slightly to about 200 trucks a day, but it is still nowhere near enough. And as a good measure, we used to get 500 trucks in a day before the escalation in hostilities. So we're still less than half. And of course, the needs have skyrocketed. So it's very tricky. And then that little aid that we do get in, we have all sorts of challenges on the ground trying to get it to the people that need it, particularly in the north.
Forgive me for an obvious, or rather it may be obvious to you, it's not obvious to me, but why is it so reduced? What is stopping more aid from getting in? Is it there and is being prevented from ingress, or is it not there for whatever reason? Why is it not easier to massively increase this supply?
So we have a lot of aid ready in position to go in. There's currently about 700 trucks sitting on the tarmac in Egypt waiting in a long queue to enter. But the challenge is this very slow and complex screening process at the border. So everything gets screened. It takes days, and it's very opaque. We don't have a lot of visibility on what's happening in that process or what's going to come out the other side when, which then makes it very difficult for us to plan distribution. So it's logistical challenges, James, that could easily be fixed to scale up the number of trucks coming in.
So what is the unspoken reason behind that then? What is the suspicion or the fear that if it is easily fixed, why is it not being fixed?
Well, we're asking that question and have been for 6 months because, we know that these crossings can operate at a higher capacity. We're asking for more trucks to come in. It's not happening. We're asking for more crossings to be opened. There's 2 other access paths that could be opened. Not happening. So, I'm not going to speculate.
No,
but,
fair enough. So, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. What defines famine, Tess? Well, because people have been hearing now for some time that the people in Gaza are on the brink, on the precipice of famine. What pushes the needle into that territory?
So it's a very specific set of data that's needed for this international group to declare a famine. They're the global experts on when that threshold is breached. And there's a number of measures. One is kind of food insecurity, one is the number of malnourished children, and the other one is mortality, so how many people are dying. And in February, we came very close to that threshold in the north, and that's why the UN said that famine could happen at any moment now. And based on what I saw up there on Sunday, we are close, if not there.
That was my next question. Can you give us a sort of eyewitness account of what you saw in both sort of human and material terms?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that's important to note is the destruction. As you drive through, that's the first thing that you see, and the sheer scale of how much has been damaged or just completely reduced to rubble is shocking. There is not a lot left in the north of Gaza, James, and I think that is, an important part of a conversation we'll have in the future as to how do people return to their homes in that area. But for now, that destruction is shocking, and people are really trying to live amongst it, those that remain there. And it also explains why they haven't been able to get a lot of food, because all of the systems that they depend on have been destroyed. Plus, aid has been restricted to the area. And then we went to the hospital. Kamal Adwan Hospital is one of the main points that's treating children for acute malnutrition. And it's almost, I've lost for words. Yeah. I saw babies, toddlers, small children who were all severely malnourished. 35-day-old baby who had lost weight since being born because the mother couldn't breastfeed because she was malnourished. That baby's now just over 1 kilo. in weight, a 2.5-year-old, very sick, very thin, and a 7-year-old girl who was very malnourished, and we ended up actually medically evacuating her on our return from that mission. So we managed to bring her back to the south with us so that she can get the treatment that she needs.
It beggars belief, some of what you describe, and I hesitate to ask the next question because I can speculate on what the answer would be. But what does how does this end for them? What would they consider to be light at the end of the tunnel now? And you should probably, if you can, incorporate into your answer the concerns about Israel going into Rafah.
So I think for the people in the north, they just need aid. That's what they want. I spoke to a mother and I said to her, "What food have you managed to get?" And she just kind of shrugged at me. And so I was kind of pushing her for an answer. I said, "Bread?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, no, haven't seen bread in."
So this is visceral, isn't it? I'm sitting here in a studio and I'm asking you questions that in my mind are quite complicated. But if you're hungry, if your baby is losing weight, there's nothing beyond that. There's no light at the end of the tunnel or end game or chapter 2. We need to eat.
Exactly. And it's as simple as that because, for them, we're all having these complex discussions about ceasefires, and to them it's simple. It's just, how do I survive today? How do I make sure my baby survives the night? And that is so reliant on aid in the north. Now, in the south, the situation's different. Aid does get there, nowhere near enough, but we are getting aid to the people of Rafah. But they're all terrified.
Right.
They know, they hear the news of a ground offensive in Rafah. And, some of the people I met have already moved 6 or 7 times over the last 6 months. They don't want to be displaced again. They don't know where they would go. They're aware of the level of destruction north of them. And they're frightened. There was one woman, actually, who I met in January and then again when I returned last week. And you could see that she was losing hope. She said to me, we're kind of at a point of despair that we don't feel like we're going to make it through now.
I suppose, given what we just said about hunger, and you draw, of course, the important distinction between the north and the south, but when you describe the destruction, does your mind even begin yet to turn to the question of what rebuilding is going to involve? You're talking about people living on a bomb site, living in rubble. You use the phrase because there is no other phrase to use. They're returning to their homes, but they're not, are they? Because their homes aren't there. So what can we get a handle on the scale of what, if it ever happens, a rebuilding process would look like and involve?
Billions of dollars and many years. I went through Khan Yunis as well, which is the area where Israeli ground troops have just withdrawn from, and that is also an intense level of destruction. 8 out of 10 schools in Gaza are either damaged or destroyed. So it's not just homes, it's schools and it's hospitals and it's markets and offices, it's everything. And, one of the things I was thinking about while I was driving around the north was, this could very easily be my hometown in Australia. It was all of the things that we have in our communities: cinemas, shops, rubble, and people just standing in the blackened dirt around it.
Tess Ingram, thank you. That seems an inappropriate. Well, actually, no. Before you go, do you fear for your own safety while you're there?
Yes.
Okay.
I was in an incident where the car that I was in was hit by live ammunition. And that is just yet another example of the fact that the systems that are meant to protect humanitarian workers, they're not functioning properly. The World Central Kitchen colleagues were killed. This is happening regularly where humanitarian workers are put in harm's way. So, yeah, it is a very dangerous operating environment, and it is affecting the aid that we can bring to children.
Of course. Well, take care. Tess Ingram, UNICEF spokesperson, as I said, who was in Gaza until Monday, one of the few external humanitarian aid workers to have visited the north of the Strip recently, speaking to us there live from Amman.